the Discernment cohort for the 6 through 12 faith formation approach. We're really glad to have folks. We have folks from all three vicariates. It's a really beautiful thing to have everybody here. And we're just so grateful to be together. Let's start together with a quick prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Loving God, we appreciate the opportunity to work in your vineyard, to serve the young people of our diocese, to serve our parishes, to serve you. Thank you for entrusting us with this work and with this community of disciples with whom to do this work in your name. We ask that you be with us today to help us be open to learning and growing and connecting with one another, and continue to guide Bishop Persico and all the leaders of our diocese so that we may continue to grow in service, in knowledge, in goodness, truth, and beauty. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and shall be, world without end. Amen. Amen. And with the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. All right, so we are going to start. We would love to take a lot of time to hear from everybody. We had this fancy reflection question, but just in the interest of time, we are trying to be really respectful of that 1 hour window, though we'll buffer over that for questions. Mary, could I ask you to start recording? Oh, she did. Great. So we are going to start with intros, and we'll do this popcorn style so that you always know who's coming up next. So if you could say your name, your parish, city, and your title, and then call on the next person. So I'll go first. I'm Jessie Hubert, Director of Faith Formation for Parish Support. I'm at Sacred Heart in Erie, and I'm going to popcorn it to Mary Hicken.
Hi, I'm Mary Hicken. I'm the Director of Faith Formation for Catechesis and Sacraments. And I'm going to just popcorn it over to Samantha Nedzinski.
Hi, I'm Samantha Nedzinski, and I'm here with my larger faith formation team. We're from the St. Mary's Interparish Faith Formation program in St. Mary's, Pennsylvania. And I'll popcorn to Daria.
Hi, I'm Daria Saki. I'm from St. Joseph's, Oil City, and the larger Oil City Catholic community, the DRE, and I will pop it over to Jillian.
Thank you. My name is Jillian Zazik. I'm the not the executive director. That's Deacon Steve. He'll introduce himself later. I'm the director of Young Adult and Youth Ministry for the Diocese of Erie, and I'm at St. Joe's Bread of Life Parish. And now I feel obligated to give it to Deacon Steve to correct my errors. So,
I'm Deacon Steve. I'm the director of Young Adult and Youth here in the Diocese. My parish is St. George. And I'll popcorn it over to Annette Smith.
Must be muted.
Hi, I'm Annette Smith. I'm from St. Basil's in Coalport, and I'm the faith formation leader. And I'll pop it to Terry.
Thanks, Annette. This is Terry Clarkson, and I'm the coordinator at St. Bonaventure and St. Timothy in Clearfield County. And I will go to Sherry Lang.
Hi, I'm Sherry Lang. I'm a second grade faith formation teacher for the Du Bois area churches. And I'll pop it over to Jean Yapel. Hope I pronounced that right.
You did. Thank you. Hi, I'm Jeannie Yapel, and I am the Faith Formation Director at St. Boniface Parish, Erie. And I don't know who went or did not go yet. Did Rosemary go? Ferguson? Okay, I'm popping it over to you.
Good. No, I am Rosemary Ferguson from St. Bartholomew Parish in Sharpsville. I am faith formation coordinator, youth minister, adult education, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to popcorn over to Missy.
Hi, I'm Missy Silka. I am from St. Teresa and St. Thomas Parish in Union City and Corey. I am the faith formation coordinator for both parishes. I will pop it over to Irene.
Irene, go ahead and unmute for us.
I thought I clicked that, sorry. Irene Schneider from St. Francis Xavier Parish in McCain. I'm the Director of Evangelization, and we'll go to Stacy.
I'm Stacy Badowski. I'm the Director of Lifelong Faith Formation for St. Mark the Evangelist and Mount Calvary parishes. And I'm going to popcorn over to Kate Wilson.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm Kate Wilson. I'm the Faith Formation Director for Marriage and Family Life. My home parish is St. Boniface in Erie, and I'm going to popcorn over to Teresa Frederick.
Hello, I am Teresa Frederick from Clarion, Pennsylvania, and Linda Somerville and I are here together. We work together on the Faith Formation Program at Immaculate Conception Parish. And I'll popcorn over to Judy Wolbert.
Hi, I'm Judy Wolbert, and I'm at St. Joseph's in Lucinda, Faith Formation Director, and I will popcorn it over to Mary Ann.
Hi, I'm Mary Ann Nichols from St. Catherine of Siena. I'm the Pastoral Associate, and I'm going to push you over to Sherry Lang.
Already did.
Okay, sorry.
We could have Jen Durney go.
I'm Jen Durney. I'm the DRE of Blessed Sacrament here in Erie, and I also was not paying attention to who went and who didn't. Has anyone not introduced themselves yet? Okay, Maria Berkeley, why don't you go ahead?
I'm Maria Berkeley. I'm the religious head leader at All Saints Parish, and I'll be bouncing in and out because I'm also at work today. Did anybody else not go?
Judy didn't go, so go ahead, Judy.
Hi, I'm Judy Seaman, and I am Assistant Faith Formation Facilitator with Tia Barger at St. Michael's in Greenville. And I'll go to Lauren DeFelice.
Hi, I'm Lauren DeFelice. I'm at Good Shepherd in West Middlesex, and I'm the Faith Formation Director. I'm not sure if anybody needs to go.
Thanks, Lauren. I know we have Oma and Opa's iPad with us. Can you hear us? And Barb Murray as well. Looks like she's trying to connect to audio. So welcome to those folks. And Everett Fritz, would you do an intro for us?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Everett Fritz. I'm the Executive Director of Andrew Ministries, and I'm blessed to be with you today, coming from Littleton, Colorado.
Love it. Thank you so much. And I see the St. Mary's Interparish folks. Hi, St. Mary's. Good to see you all.
What's up, Everett?
That's the voice of Nick Heist, the one and only. All right. Did we get everybody that we can get? Wonderful. Thank you so much. We wanted to do this at least in session one to make sure that there was a little bit of a sense of the breadth of the giftedness in this group. So we're really excited about that. I'm going to turn it over to Deacon Steve now, who's going to give a little bit of context. Everett's going to get started about 12:15. So we just have a little bit of information before we dive into content today. Go ahead, Deacon Steve.
Thank you, Jesse. Again, welcome everybody. I know that we call this a discernment cohort for discerning between the 4-year or 6-year rollout track, which really was our best thinking at the time that we put out the invitation. But since then, our commitment to synodal listening with the priests, and we know that some leaders were invited to the Northern Vicariate yesterday, that meeting. So we know that there are a lot of ideas out there, and we're sorry for those of you who have been in the mix and been left feeling more confused or chaotic. That was not our intent. So ultimately, Bishop Persico is going to approve a specific rollout plan. And we're having these meetings to garner people's best thoughts to present. So all parishes will have to choose with what the bishop promulgates in the end. So there's that piece. So we want to hold off really on talking about rollout plans until after we've met with the priests in the Western Vicariate. And we ask you to be patient with us as we talk more specifics in session 3 on April 6th. And that's the beauty and challenge of adapting to feedback. It means that we're able to be good listeners and responsive. It also means that we don't have a hard and fast answers for you yet. So, but the good news is that it does not impact today's session, because today's session is relevant whether you were doing the 4-year or the 6-year. So again, whether you wanted to move fast or slow, today's session is going to be very relevant for you. And again, we thank you for your patience, and we ask you for your patience. Back over to you, Jesse.
Thank you. we emailed out with the link to these meetings a discernment checklist document. And even though, like Deacon Steve said, we're not going to talk about rollout until after we finish all of these meetings with the priest, there's some checkpoints in there that are still a really useful litmus test. So we encourage you to continue to engage with that content, and you'll position yourself for a stronger launch if you take the next year to cultivate some of those things anyway. So we just want to be really clear that a sense of competition or feeling fearful aren't good reasons to want to move fast. There are other good reasons to want to move fast, but we want to discourage those ones. So, and just a couple of quick ground rules for our Zooms. Just a reminder, we are recording. We did say that before. And take advantage of the chat today. We know there's a lot of people here. So if you have questions or things you want to respond to, take advantage of that. We might not get to your questions immediately in the moment, but we are going to do Q&A at 1 o'clock. And if you have to excuse yourself, we understand, but we will be sending out the recording of that content. And also from one of your loving millennials, those emojis can be really helpful ways to engage non-verbally with the content today. So if you love what the presenter is saying, if you have questions about it or thoughts about it, feel free to use those emojis as well, because that non-verbal feedback in the large group Zoom can be really helpful for building community. All right, Deacon Steve wants to share one update from our team, and then we'll get into introducing Everett.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Some of you have already heard that and have been part of our prayers, but we have been praying very, very earnestly for our dear friend Kate. Kate, who is expecting her second child, went into premature labor on Saturday and was hospitalized, and so also put on bed rest, but she's doing well. You can see her here. She's here just to kind of get a sense of what we're doing. You know, we can't keep Kate off of the screen, but we have really been praying for her and her baby and her husband and their other son, George. So we've been praying for them strong, that God lets little DJ stay in place so that he can grow and be born healthy. So we just want to offer that prayer to Kate and ask you to continue to pray for Kate as well. So Kate's original due date was July. So we're just praying that little DJ stays in place as long as he can. So, and we're grateful that Kate is here, and she was released from the hospital today, and she's right here on Zoom, even though she just got home today.
Just can't stay away from you all. You're great people.
All right, so today we have Everett here. He's going to share with us a dynamic way of recruiting ministry volunteers, and we think that that's the beginning of setting the tone of culture change regarding faith formation at your parishes. We're so grateful he's here to offer his professional development workshop to you all. He's going to present until 1 o'clock, which may be time that you have to leave, as Jesse said, but we will stay on for Q&A afterwards, and that'll be available on the recording of this that we're going to send out, again, as Jesse said. So Jillian.
Yeah, I'm going to give the very impressive bio of Everett, you know, so everybody prepared to be amazed, you know, that's what I say. Everett is the executive director of Ministries, as he said, which is an organization that exists to help Catholic institutions in forming young missionary disciples. He is the author of 4 books, including The Art of Forming Young Disciples. Everett holds a BA in theology from Franciscan University of Steubenville, an MA in theology with concentrations in catechesis and evangelization from the Augustine Institute. He lives in Colorado with his wife Katrina and their 3 kids. He also has another book coming out on the way, literally like in 2 months, which is great. You can already pre-order it on Amazon, and it's about the art of forming one-on-one disciples, which is exactly what we're here to do in our diocese, is form lifelong disciples. So without further ado, we give it over to Everett.
Thanks, Jillian. Thank you all for having me today too. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. A couple of things real quick, just before I jump into the presentation. I failed to mention, I think I sent my bio to Jillian ahead of time. I failed to mention I'm a 16-year veteran of youth ministry. And so I may just in passing mention the term youth ministry. I find sometimes it's helpful to define terms. When I speak of youth ministry, I'm speaking of all things ministry to young people. So that includes catechesis, evangelization, encounter, discipleship, which are all different things. I think sometimes we think of youth ministers as, oh, those are the people who play with the teens, right? And it's like, no, like the ministry we're doing with young people encompasses really everything. I mean, when I speak of youth ministry, it's about meeting the needs of our young people, and that's all encompassing. The second thing I want to talk about real quick before we jump in is just the elephant in the room. Sometimes I find it's really helpful to get the elephant in the room out of the way so that people feel free to speak freely. I'm a very blunt, direct person. I like to get straight to the point and not beat around the bush. So the Diocese of Erie is rolling out a very ambitious plan to form young people. I am supportive of it. I think it's a really beautiful what they're trying to address. The church has recently had a synod on young people. There have been the USCCB did a 5-year study talking to over 10,000 young people. There was a lot of input from young people, and the short of it is that young people are saying, hey, we need to do a better job. The elephant in the room is that when you have a very ambitious plan that you're rolling out, the spectrum of reactions to it is anything from excitement to fear, to apprehension, to downright, hey, this isn't going to work. It doesn't matter where you're at on the spectrum. I think it's a good thing if you're emotional about it. The one thing I'll say is that, good plan or not, the intention of the church when it presents good results, it should always be to follow the will of the Holy Spirit. The apostles, if you read Acts of the Apostles, they didn't always have the best plan. And in fact, people can look at their plan sometimes and say, that doesn't make any sense at all. But their intention was to follow the will of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit made sense of their mess. The church was born. People were converted. It all worked. I think the antithesis to following the will of the Holy Spirit is the sentence, we've always done it this way. So I put that out there because the way I'm going to present to you, I want to try to give you a presentation that will help you in your ministry, regardless of what it is that you're doing. And we're talking about recruiting volunteers today, which is going to be, in order to execute on the plan that's being rolled out, absolutely vital. And I think just about any ministry professional will say, I need more volunteers, or I need better volunteers. So I hope that what we talk about today will be helpful to you. And the reason why I put it out there that, hey, we're following the will of the Holy Spirit and we're going to do things differently is because the way I want to lay things out to you today is probably very different than perhaps a lot of ministry professionals typically recruit their volunteers. So we're going to embrace that with openness today. And then in your Q&A, by all means, throw at me any questions you have, regardless of where you're at on the spectrum of change and your unique situations to your parish. All right. I'm going to share my screen, and somebody at the diocese let me know if for some reason my screen doesn't come up, but I think it should be up. Yeah, okay, I'm getting nods. All right. So when I meet with ministry professionals and give seminars, and I get the opportunity to do this on a regular basis, there's an exercise that I like to do with them that I call the theory of one, which is essentially that, there's the slide. Oh, I'm a little behind. There's the slide. All right. The theory of one is the idea that like one lifelong follower of Jesus Christ will have a bigger impact on the world and a bigger impact on the church than 1,000 mediocre Catholics. And when I say like a lifelong follower of Jesus Christ, let's set the bar high. Look at a St. John Paul II. And the work that St. John Paul II did and the impact that he had on the world. And you look and you say, man, if we had thousands of St. John Paul II's, the world would be a different place. But even the work of just one, like if we could make another John Paul II, would you trade 1,000 mediocre Catholics for another John Paul or another Mother Teresa or another St. Maximilian Kolbe or another Pier Giorgio Frassati? I'm trying to think of 20th century saints, like think about
Are we still thinking about?
It appears that way, yes. Jillian, can you message Everett for us and make sure that, great, thank you. Thanks for your patience all.
Hey, you're welcome. Quick question. I don't know if you had already sent this PowerPoint, but will this be available?
Good question. We can ask, we did not send this in advance, but we can ask Everett to make it available, yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Otherwise, I'm going to screenshot every single one.
We'll connect with him about that. Thanks for asking.
All right.
And remember that this is recorded, so we are sending the link out and you can watch it as many times as you need.
I have a question. Are there copies of any of Everett's books, well, his first book, available like the diocese to borrow?
I have my copy if you'd like to borrow it. The Art of Making Disciples, I have that if you'd like to borrow it.
Yeah, I used to have one once. I actually reviewed it for Catholic Digest 3 years ago when it came out, but I can't find it. So I need to see it again.
I can send it to you, Daria, if you'd like.
Yeah, I would like that. Thank you. While we're waiting too, I'm kind of interested in what's being done for, if we do roll out in the fall, what's being done for confirmation next year. I mean, I understand we're going to put 9, 10, 11, get them all through. And there's some particular curriculum you're developing for that.
Though that what you just said is not fully,
I know.
Yeah, just yet. So yeah.
Okay.
It's not that we don't want to answer you, it's that we really do want to answer you. And we know that we can answer that better once we've had the meeting with the Western Vicariate priest, which is happening tomorrow. So we're trying to do a better job answering that question, not a workshop.
When is the Western Vicariate meeting?
Tomorrow.
Okay. I mean, I know my pastor's going. I just couldn't recall if it was tomorrow or next week. Okay.
Good question. Thank you. Any other general questions like that? We're happy to field them at this time. When Everett gets back, we're going to tell him that this is a big old elephant in the room he's going to have to speak to, his internet connection.
Yeah.
So I do actually have a question for you. The implementation timeline that we received, there's a new little spot that I haven't seen before about small parish. What kind of small group is expected if a parish was to use the small parish? Like how does that look? How will that work?
That's a great question. So the intention of the small parishes track is for parishes that have less than 5 students per grade level in their program, which especially in the Eastern Vicariate, there are some that have that small of a group. So it's an adaptation of the small group model, and where it says small groups instead of EDGE, it would be drawing from the EDGE curriculum and coming up with a tailored plan that takes that tried and true EDGE content and delivers it in a way that doesn't just feel awkward, like, oh, there's 4 of us doing this thing that's meant for more people to be doing, but delivers it in that small group discussion format. So that's and you're right, that was a new thing that came out in response to requests from pastors of and leaders from very small parishes. So does that help, Stacy?
I think it does. So are we still then required to have the EDGE program purchased? Is this something that would get planned through the diocese and then get fed down to us, that we're following an actual plan like that? Or is it something that we're making up on our own with the EDGE program? Like where does that lie? Like how do we get the materials from the EDGE program for the small groups? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I saw Deacon Steve unmute, so between him and Mary, they can answer that question.
I was just going to say, Mary has had conversations with the EDGE folks regarding small parishes. So Mary?
I did speak with the people from EDGE and explained to them that we might have quite a few parishes who have very, very small groups and cannot afford to buy EDGE on their own. And so they are fine with us combining some parishes to purchase the EDGE program so that it's not a big monetary lift for 5 or 6 parishes. And then they can share the EDGE program, and they would still be able to do the small groups and use the questions in the format and all the materials from EDGE in their small groups, but they just wouldn't have the large group ministry programs that would normally go on in the EDGE program.
And one other just addendum to that I didn't say, it would be parishes with less than 5 students per grade level who have a real geographic or cultural reason for not being able to collaborate with other parishes. So that's kind of, and if you're discerning if that might be you or not, we're happy to have a conversation with you.
So the EDGE program then will be able to pair up with other parishes without it being a problem, like geographically. Say we had like 3 or 4 parishes that combined to then meet that 40 student requirement, 40 youth requirement as the minimum to make EDGE be functional. We are recommended to try to do that.
I was going to say it's not 40, it was just to clarify 5 per grade level. So if you take 6th, 7th, 8th, that's 15.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So if we can combine to then get that minimum of that 15, then that would be more recommended than just going the small parish, our own 5 kids. Correct?
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Good
All right.
question. Thanks.
We're going to hand it back over to Everett and have him take it away.
We can't hear you, Everett.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I'm so sorry. Literally, the internet just crashed in my home. So now I'm on a hotspot on my phone and got it fixed. But yeah, okay. I need host abilities to be able to share my screen again. Thank you all for your patience.
Your voice keeps going in and out.
Okay, I just got muted. Now I'm unmuted.
There you go.
Still need to be able to share my screen.
Jesse, you giving ability? Yep.
Okay, there we go. Come on. All right, where were we? The theory of one. Wow, that's as a presenter, it's very discombobulating to get shut down midstream. Anyway, the theory of one. You look at Jesus's public ministry, and you could say that there were parts of his ministry that really didn't work that well at all. Like if he was trying to convert the entire world himself, all by himself, you could actually characterize his ministry as a little bit of a failure. In fact, the crowds are the ones who actually had him killed. You look on his Sermon on the Mount, which is his greatest sermon ever given, his greatest teaching ever given. His message likely wasn't that well received. Like nowhere does it say in the Sermon on the Mount. The only reason we know what was said in the Sermon on the Mount is because Matthew wrote it down, and Matthew was one of the 12. There is a reality that Jesus's plan to conquer the entire world with the gospel, and the gospel spread rapidly. His entire plan was really focused in on 12 people, and even among 12 he had 3, and even among 3 he had 1. Like Jesus looked out into the crowds and he said, like, how am I going to change the world? I'm going to start by looking out and identifying Simon the fisherman. And his thought process was, how do I make Simon into Peter? So there's a ministry exercise that I like to do with ministry professionals where I say to them, look, imagine that your pastor comes to you tomorrow and he says to you, everything that you do in ministry today, whether it's your work as a DRE, youth minister, if you're working in volunteer, whatever it is, he's like, as of tomorrow, that is now going to be somebody else's responsibility. You don't need to worry about it. It's not going to go away. Somebody else is going to take care of it. I now have a new job description for you. And your new job description is so important, I'm going to double your salary. And some of you might be volunteers and you're like, I make nothing. How can you double nothing? But the idea is that this has so much value. The pastor's trying to communicate value to you. And so your new job description is to make one lifelong follower of Jesus Christ and his church. What would your ministry look like for that one person? And the reason why I wish we could do this exercise right now, but I only have 45 minutes. So this is a good exercise to do on your own. But the reason why I have ministry professionals do this is because I have them think about, like, who's the person that you could pick, like a far gone atheist. You could pick somebody who, random person you meet at a coffee shop who's got tattoos for sleeves and, like piercings all over their face. Or you could pick somebody who's well on their way in their face. I mean, you could identify any one person, and you have as long as you need. You have 30 years if you want it to meet the objective of that job description. But I said, I want you to think about how you identify that person, how you invite that person, how you form that person, what your formation would look like with that person. It's probably more conversational. It's probably more dialogue based, where you would meet, like all of these different aspects. And I have ministry professionals write down, okay, here's what I would do for that one person. And the reason is I'm trying to get them to identify, this is what it actually takes. Like if we were to actually think about what does it actually take to get a person to the finish line, they're writing down, this is what it takes. Then I have them compare it to the ministry they're doing now. And usually it looks incredibly different than the ministry they're doing now. And so I'm like, you've just identified what it actually takes to get somebody to our end goal. And then if you compare it to the ministry that most people are doing in the church, it's usually not directed towards our end goal. And so, like, if you were to actually think about it, like if I were to answer this question, this is actually Jillian mentioned my book. I'll give a quick commercial for my book. This is actually what my book is about, that's coming out on May 6th. It's called One Disciple at a Time. And it's this very premise. And it's really, the whole book is about, here's how I would answer that question. And really it's about teaching somebody, how do you actually minister to a person? Because if you were to think about all the things that you need to do to make one follower of Jesus Christ, my guess is that you would be focusing in on building a meaningful relationship with that person. You'd be focused in on forming their intellect, in formation and all the different teachings of the faith. Probably, like I said, your conversations would be more dialogue based. You'd be ministering to their wounds, because the reality is we all carry around wounds. We're sinful people. We've been wounded by sin. We've been wounded because we live in a world of sin. Sin in and of itself, the original sin, is a wound in and of itself. So we would probably have to minister to their wounds, because a lot of times wounds become an obstacle to a relationship with Christ. We'd want them to develop a mature prayer life. We'd probably be wanting them to create a heart of service, and we'd be wanting them to participate in the sacramental life. If you were to focus in on all of those things for every person in your parish, building meaningful relationships, intellect, wounds, prayer life, service, sacramental life, and that's not an exhaustive list. The reality is all of us would probably say, like, that requires a lot of time to focus in on, like, the individual needs of each person. And we say, yes, that's why you need a team. There's no possible way one pastor, one DRE, one youth minister, or one parish staff even can meet the needs of everyone that you're responsible for. I think that the majority of the work of a parish staff, for the best ministries that I've seen, have really been in trying to raise up more people on the parish to create a movement of people who minister. And so, like I said, the goal for today is to get you in the mindset of, here's some tools, here's a strategy that you can use to get the team that you need to execute the ministry that you want. Because in order to get to the end goal of what we want, which is lifelong followers of Jesus Christ, you need a team, and you need a good team. So here's how I do it when I'm trying to build the team that I'm looking for. The first thing that I realize is that Jesus has promised us the Holy Spirit. St. Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and I could have grabbed anything from that chapter in terms of a quote, because really the whole chapter is good. It's St. Paul's famous articulation about how we are all gifted people, and that not everybody has the same gifts. In fact, we all have unique gifts, and that we are one body but many parts, etc. I pull this one line out because I think it's a decent summary. But one and the same Spirit produces all these gifts, distributing them to individuals, each person as he wishes. If you have a ministry in your church, in your parish, in your community that the Holy Spirit has called you to do, he has also given the gifts necessary for that ministry to be executed. So if you are ever at a point where you say, I want to be able to do this ministry, I feel like God's calling me to do this ministry, but I just don't have the people that I need that are gifted enough to do this ministry. Take heart, the Holy Spirit has promised you will get what you need, that those people are there. I believe wholeheartedly that there are tons of people in the pews in our community, in the church, who are sitting there waiting to be invited into ministry. I'll give you one such example, and that's myself. I have been living in my archdiocese for 11 years. I'm, like I mentioned, I'm a 16-year veteran of ministry. I've got multiple degrees. In my own parish and in my own chancery, in 11 years, I've never been asked to do anything. Never. Now you might say, well, wait, did they have in the bulletin, like an announcement? Hey, we need catechists. Hey, we need, yeah, sure. They have all of those things. Has anybody ever approached me and said, hey, Everett, I know that you have these particular gifts and we could really use you here? No, never. Have I presented myself and said, hey, I have these particular gifts and I'd love for you to put them to use where you need them? Constantly. I constantly go to my parish, my chancery, and tell them that. In fact, I'm going to I finally had just yesterday, somebody from the archdiocese call me and say, hey, we'd like to invite you to our synod meeting for the diocese. And I was like, thank you. In 11 years, this is the first time the chancery's ever asked me to do anything. This is a response of me just like needling this person over and over and over again. There are people that are gifted in your pews that are waiting to be called. And you might say, well, why do I need to call them? We'll get to that in a second. How do you find these people first off and foremost? I think that the reality is a lot of people don't step forward because they don't even realize the gifts that they have. Sometimes those gifts need to be brought out, need to be brought to fruition. One of the best volunteers I ever had in my youth ministry, who's now living discerning consecrated life, working full-time in ministry, serving with Dr. Bob Schutz down in Florida with his wonderful healing ministry and theology of the body ministry. She first started to come into her faith and learn her faith because I was a first-year youth minister desperate for volunteers, and I cold called everybody in our parish, and she said yes, but I don't even know the Hail Mary. And I was like, that's okay, we'll teach it to you. You said yes. I'll take it. So how do you identify, like she actually had phenomenal gifts. And once we started pulling them out of her, we were able to make up for what was lacking and form her better and better. How do you find the qualities that you're seeking in a volunteer? The first thing, I believe that there might've been a form that was emailed out ahead of time. You guys can, Jillian or Jesse, or you guys can nod if there was a form, and if not, we'll email it to you later. But one of the steps on the form is to identify criteria, 5 criteria that you want your leaders to have. Best possible leader, ideal. So your criteria could be anything. I mean, I would hope, like, Catholic and faithful to the magisterium of the church, hopefully is on there somewhere. Knowledgeable about their faith. I was doing this with somebody and they said dependable. I was like, that's a practical thing, but that's really good. Dependable. I want my leaders to be virtuous. I want them to be people who are living a life of virtue, not just talking about the teachings of the faith, but actually living them. I want them to have a prayer life. I want them to be people who are kind and friendly and people that are warm to be around. Whatever the qualities are, I ask people, like, identify 5 qualities, 5 criteria. And then I have them start thinking around every single person that they know who meets at least 3 of those 5 criteria. And I say, start making a list. Like, and in that list, create categories. And this is not a list of people that you think might say yes, or people maybe that you haven't asked before. This is anybody that meets 3 of these 5 criteria, their name goes on the list. And on that list, like, we have a form that has been emailed out, and take a look at it if you haven't taken a look at it. But there are categories. And in the first category, it's like, let's hit the low-hanging fruit. Our clergy should be able to hit at least 3 of these 5 criteria, hopefully. We hope so. So it's like, who do you know? Catholic deacons, Catholic priests, your pastor, seminarians, religious sisters and brothers, whoever you know in those categories, put their names on those lists. You should at least have one name on there. Your pastor should be on there. Then you go down to the category of parents. Like, who are the parents that I know that meet at least 3 of these 5 criteria? Who are the young adults that I know who may have grown up in our program, that maybe you've been serving in your ministry for 30 years, and there are young adults that are hopefully have graduated out of your program, have gone to college, maybe come back, etc. Put their names on the list. Local coaches, schools. If you have one of the leaders of the chancery and they're a member of your parish, put their name on the list. Like the exercise is to basically build as big of a list as you can get. This is what fundraisers do. Like when they're looking to build a list of potential donors, the longer the list, the better. And so I recently did this exercise with a young lady about a week ago, and we just started walking through it. And by the end of it, she had a list of 25, 30 names, and there were a lot of names on there she hadn't thought of before. And when I said, she's like, but I've already asked some of these people. Some of them have already said no. I said, that's okay. Like we're not going to take a no for an answer. We'll get to that. And we're not going to take what they've said in the past as basically dogma or doctrine, like this is a forever no. This is something new, and sometimes it takes a different approach to call those people forward. So the first thing is make your list. The next thing is invitation. This is the hardest work, I think, in the 6-year plan that the diocese is rolling out. This is the hardest work that you will do, is the leader recruitment phase. And it is the most time consuming, and it's the most personal. But the reality is, if you get the team that you need, the rest of the work that comes will be super easy, because the reality is most of the work of ministry that is going to be coached moving forward for the next 6 years is really going to be on the shoulders of the volunteers and the leaders and the powerful team that you raise up. So the more personal, the more hard work you put in, the longer your list is of people, the more conversations you have, the easier the work is going to be over the next several years. How do I go about recruiting? My invitation is very personal. I don't do bulletin announcements. I don't do pulpit announcements. If I do, the people who come forward, who are few and far between, tend to not be the people that I'm looking for. I go and I invite people out to coffee one-on-one. If there is one thing that I put in my budget every year as a line item, and I've told business managers this when I've worked there, I said, here's my ideal budget. If there's one thing you may not cut that I absolutely have to have, it's a coffee budget. And they're like, what's a coffee budget? And I said, I'm going to be taking a lot of people out to coffee, and I don't want all of that coming out of my pocket. So I said, you need to cover it. If it's not coffee, it's take them out to dinner. If it's not dinner, take them out for drinks. Don't underestimate the power of alcohol to get people to say yes to your ministry. It lowers inhibitions. That's a joke, by the way, but Jesus drank wine, so it's okay. I do a personal invite. There are statistics in fundraising that have shown that if you do a letter writing campaign asking people to give money to a mission, there is a less than 1% return on investment, meaning that if you do a letter writing campaign, in order for you to make any kind of money on a letter writing campaign, you have to have at least 10,000 people on your letter writing campaign to make any kind of money, because less than 1% of them are actually going to give. If they make a phone call instead of writing a letter, there's a 17% return on investment. But if you do a one-on-one asking somebody to give a gift, a donation for a cause, 50% of the time they will give one-on-one. I have seen that more or less been the exact same ratio when I invite volunteers into ministries, that when I do a one-to-one ask and I present the mission to them, there is a reality that I get the kind of people and the kind of responses that I'm looking for. In my coffee chat, the conversation that I have is, first off and foremost, I want to get to know the person that I'm talking to. I want to get to know what their life is like. I want them to know that I have an investment in them. And that's not fake. I really do have an investment in my leaders. I want a relationship with my team. This is very much a team mindset. Then when it gets to, hey, why is it that you invited me out here to coffee? I say, look, I have a mission that is very important. And I present the mission, not the program. Let me describe what that means. And this is perhaps the biggest learning curve, is learning how to present your mission in a desirable way. The mission I work in youth ministry. I'll give you the 2-minute elevator pitch right now. 80% of our young people are leaving the Catholic Church. And really that's a generous statistic. I think it's a lot more than that. The reality is that our young people go into their life, and they do not have adult guidance and adult mentorship in their life. The average schedule of an American teenager is they wake up in the morning, they go to school early in the morning for extracurriculars, they have 8 to 10 hours of instruction during the day, they have extracurriculars after school, maybe an after school job, they come home, a lot of times they don't have a family dinner with their family, they then do 2 to 3 hours of homework and they go to bed. At no point during that day did they have a meaningful conversation with an adult. Like, the lives of teenagers are that they are being raised by their peers. This is not a church problem. It's not a school problem. It's a cultural problem. That's a Western civilization problem. I need adults who are willing to guide and mentor young people in what it means to be a Catholic. And really what that means is what it means to be a human. Because we're all created in the image and likeness of God, and we're all called to that mission. Can you give me 2 hours a week to work with a handful of young people and mentor them in life and faith and what is good and true and beautiful? That's the mission I present to them. Now, that's very different than presenting to them a program and saying, look, I have this education program. I need catechists. I'm really short on catechists. If you volunteer and give us your Sunday mornings, we'll give you a textbook. We'll give you a classroom. We'll assign to you, this is how it all works, etc. That's much less appealing. Like, that doesn't speak to my heart. That doesn't speak to my gifts. That doesn't speak to what it is that I might be called to. When you present the mission, you say, you are important. I recognize your gifts. You can even say to them, here's the criteria that I'm looking for. And I see you as having these particular criteria. And I need people who can do this, because our young people need them, people who can do this, because if you don't, nobody will. And our young people need it in order to thrive. Can you give 2 hours? That's a mission. That's inspiring. That says to me personally, you can make a difference. That's much different than saying, I need a couple hours to fill in my program. Present the mission, not the program. When they get into the, hey, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know that I have the confidence to do this. I don't know my faith as well as you think I might know. That's when you say, well, here's the program. We're going to make it easy for you. That's where the program comes in. But you got to present the mission first. The whole invitation hinges on understanding your mission and knowing how to present it. Third thing that I do is I offer to partner a person to cover their weak spots. Just from a safe environment standpoint, when you're working with young people, the more you can partner adults up with another person, the better. Sometimes I will even use that as a pitch approach, where I say, look, I really want, the person might say, I'm really not that strong in catechesis, but I can be kind, I can mentor young people, I can be playful with them. I'm like, great, that's what I need you to do. I'm going to partner you with somebody that doesn't have that strength, but is really good with the catechesis. And the two of you will work together. Or I use that as a sales pitch and I say, hey, who would you like to do this ministry with? Can you help me recruit them with you? That's actually what I'm doing with my own son's youth ministry right now. Is I pulled a friend of mine in because my son had said to me, hey, will you run my youth ministry? That's a whole nother long story. And I said, sure. And then I called up my friend Mark and I said, hey, my son wants us to start this as a means of formation for him. Do you want to do it with me? Just because I thought it'd be fun to do it with Mark rather than do it all on my own. You can use your leaders to recruit other leaders. It works really, really well. Fourth thing I'll say, flexibility in scheduling. This has been vital for me in ministry. One of the things that really hinders our ability to find the volunteers that we're looking for is to have ministry only on one night of the week. And this is outside the box thinking, but I just want to throw it out there as something to think about. I mentioned I do youth ministry. At some point 11 years ago, I threw out the youth group. I said the youth group is not meeting the needs of my young people. It's also not helping me get the people that I need, because I could find capable volunteers, but my youth group was on Sunday nights and I didn't have, there were a lot of volunteers who were like, I would love to do it, but I'm not giving up my Sunday nights. Like, that's my family time, or that's my time to do this or that. I go to my leaders and I say to them, when are you available? Are you available Tuesday mornings? Are you available Wednesday evenings? Are you available Friday nights? Whatever. Are you available Sunday after Mass? Tell me when you're available. We'll try to create a ministry that meets at that time. That's outside the box. That bring it up in Q&A if you want to know more about that kind of approach. But flexibility in scheduling and is incredibly important for meeting the needs of young people today, and also for helping to get the volunteers that you're looking for. Final thing that I say to them is that, look, the reality is I'm looking for leaders who will walk with young people for 4, 6, 7, 8 years of their life. I don't tell my leaders that, or I might be upfront with them and say, hey, I'd love for you to do this for 8 years. There is no way I would ask you to make an 8-year commitment to this. This is a 1-year commitment with a catch. The catch is that at the end of 1 year, if you have discerned that you do not want to continue in this ministry, or you can't continue for whatever reason, that's fine, but you got to help me recruit your replacement. Because at this point now, you know the teens that and the young people that you're ministering to, you have a relationship with them, and you probably know what they need. Help me find their leader. And this isn't to say that, oh, and you're stuck in this ministry until you find your replacement. That's a little bit twisted, but to say to them, I need your help recruiting, so that it doesn't just fall on me to try to replace leaders every year. Help me do that. And more times than not, if the ministry is effective, the leaders are getting as much out of it as the teens are, and they want to invest for more than a year. All right, formation of leaders. What I do with my leaders, I mentioned that I have leaders who meet with young people all throughout the week. Because of that, I have to have really good communication and really good formation for my leaders. When I focused in on just as a ministry professional, trying to build a really, really good team around me, a team that I could trust to run the ministry, 80% of my ministry became the handful of young people that I was focusing in on in terms of the ministry initiatives that I was leading, and then just mentoring and ministering to my leaders. And I allowed them to do the majority of the ministry. So I have regular meetings with my formation leaders. And you might say, oh my gosh, you're asking them to give like once a week commitment and something else on top of it? Yes. And the once a week on top of it shouldn't be a catechetical lesson. What I do for my leaders is what I expect them to be doing for the young people that they're working with. I invite my leaders once a month over for dinner. I feed them dinner, or I do it in the parish. I don't necessarily do it in my house, but I feed them dinner. We talk through what's going well with the young people they're working with, what's not going well. The leaders troubleshoot together, and they say, oh, I was having that problem with my young people that I was working with, and here's what I did that was really effective. I've had other leaders that have said things like, my group that I'm working with, or the young people I'm working with, or my class, or whatever the case may be, we're going to be serving in a soup kitchen in a couple of weeks. And I've had other group leaders that say, oh, can we hop on that? So they start working together and collaborating. And then I spend about 30 minutes at the end forming them. And I usually do something very simple. And I try to identify, well, what is it that you need? Is it mentorship and prayer? I know for a great example of it is I had a lot of leaders that were bringing up Pope John Paul II's theology of the body, because a lot of questions were coming up with the young people that they were working with. And they said, I know that the theology of the body addresses some of these things, but I don't know anything about it. Like, I'm like, okay, great. Let me teach you. And we will work through that for the next 6 months and give you a basic education in it, so that hopefully you can work with them on it as well. So I meet with my leaders monthly, and I minister to them. I also communicate with them weekly via email. Short emails, takes me about 30 seconds, just trying to communicate, hey, what happened in your group this week? What happened in your ministry? What was discussed? Who was there, etc. So that I'm just connecting with them and they feel supported on a daily basis. This is also, or a weekly basis. This also helps me to know, like, if they're having trouble with any particular young people, if there are any things that are coming up that they can't handle, questions that are coming up, etc. Having that weekly connection point using email is vital for my leaders, having good communication. I provide imitation. The way that as I mentioned, the way that I want them to minister to the young people is the way that I minister to them. And finally, I utilize resources for additional training. Like, there may be all kinds of catechetical resources out there today. I'm just thinking about like things you can find on YouTube for free. Ascension Press has all kinds of good stuff. There's the Catechetical Institute by the Franciscan University. If you actually want to get people certified, there's that's all online. There's Formed, which has just way too much content on it. There's all kinds of free or inexpensive or tracks you can find and take in terms of resources to train your leaders and give them things that they can do on their own, so that they don't feel like they're an island. My slides are moving so slow. Come on, there it is. What if you still can't find leaders? What if after making your criteria, making your list, doing invitations one after another, you make it all the way down your list and you still don't have enough leaders? In fact, you have no leaders. Then here's the reality of it. The bad news is you can't do ministry. It's fundamentally impossible. I actually had this with a parish that I was working with. I was working with a pastor out in Massachusetts, and we got to the action step, which is one of our first steps of starting to identify who's some adults that you could think of that meet the criteria that we've identified, that can work with your young people. And he had a list of like 2 or 3 people, and those 2 or 3 people wouldn't get on board. And the father was then like, what do I do? I was like, you only came up with 2 or 3 people in your parish that met the criteria? And even after talking through the whole thing, he was like, I got no one. And I get it. Like I talked to a religious sister out in Ireland that we were talking around the criteria of leaders that she was looking for. She's like, I can identify maybe 10 people in the entire diocese that I think are followers of Jesus Christ. And that's the reality of Ireland. Like Ireland's a mess in terms of their church. And I said, okay, well then, you know, the first 10 people you're going to be working with. I said to Father, I was like, look, here's the bad thing. You don't need to be focused on young people. You need to be focused on adult ministry. I said, you need to be raising up those leaders, because if you do not have adults that are living their faith, you cannot do youth ministry. Young people require adults who have walked along the path themselves to show them the way. Our entire faith for 2,000 years has been passed down from generation to generation, primarily through imitation. And so if people are not living the faith, it's impossible to imitate them. So you need to be focused in on raising up the people who are living to live their faith. I hope that we don't get to that point where it's like, I can't find any leaders. But if we do, then we start to troubleshoot on that and come up with a strategy of saying, okay, how do we raise up those leaders? All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. All of this to say, look, the diocese has laid out a 6-year plan. I know that they can, I'm not going to speak to that. They know the plan better than I do. But it is very ambitious to say, oh my gosh, we're going to change all of our programs. We're going to do things differently. We need a huge team. The action step is to say, like, what's the criteria that I need? And can I have a coffee chat with somebody new this month? And start to talk around inviting them into mission, start those conversations, start those relationships. When you make it as simple as saying, like, this month or this week, I'm going to go out to coffee with one person and invite them out to coffee. And maybe it's as simple as saying, it's starting with like, here's what's going on in my life, here's what's going on in your life, but we're just connecting on those things. If you give yourself a year to say, I'm going to start doing that kind of relationship building, so that slowly throughout the year, I start to recruit and plant the idea of the mission into these people's head, I guarantee you're going to make progress in getting to the team that you're looking for. Again, this is very different than the typical approach that I see most ministry professionals take. Most ministry professionals, they say, I need people. We're going to put it in our bulletin. We're going to send it out by flock note, email. We're going to do a pulpit announcement, etc. That's akin to taking a flyer and saying, come to our event, and then going out onto the top of a skyscraper in New York City and throwing a whole stack of flyers out there and saying, we invited everyone. It's out there. Anybody can get our flyers. Nobody's going to see it. Like, I hear those pulpit announcements, it goes in one ear, out the other every Sunday. I want to know how I can serve the mission of the church and how my gifts can plug in a way that actually makes an impact. Those people who are sitting in the pews, who are gifted, who are waiting to be invited, they want to know that they can make an impact on a real mission. So it starts with getting to know them, getting to know what their gifts are, and then inviting them into that mission. I'm at my time, 11 o'clock, even with the pause in there for internet issues. So I'm going to hand it back to Deacon Steve, and we'll take it from there.
And I hand it back to Jesse.
Great. Thank you so much. Wow. Great job, Everett, making it happen by 1 o'clock. We're so thankful for you. I'm going to put this back in gallery view so we can all see each other. So we know that some folks might have to off ramp right now. Thank you for generously sharing your time with us today and for your grace with the technical glitch. We are going to open it up for questions. Jillian did respond to the one question we got about EDGE and homeschooling. So that's something that we will put on EDGE's radar and definitely include in our conversation with Katie Gray and the EDGE leaders next week. So thank you for that question. We will add that to the mix. And Everett's willing to stay on with us for a while to answer some of your questions. So if you have some, feel free to throw them in the chat, or you're welcome to raise your hand and unmute and speak directly to him. So we will open the floor.
Yeah, Everett, you mentioned, the whole one night a week is not a good model because people often are not available that one night. But the whole thing we're implementing is a weekly youth group, and it's only going to be one night a week in each parish. So aside from people who do peripheral ministries like preparing the food that we serve them ahead of time, that kind of thing, we really do need people one night a week. I'm not sure what my question is, but we're kind of stuck.
No, I'll speak to that. I mean, I know that EDGE is one night a week because I'm very familiar with the EDGE program, and I know that confirmation preparation for the sacrament of confirmation is going to be one night a week. You got to have some form and format to that. I think for rural parishes, there's some flexibility in that as well. I coach primarily small group ministry. And so with that, and that is the direction I know that 10th, 11th, 12th grade we're looking at. So I say that basically to say, like, you don't want to eliminate people. Even when I get a no from somebody and somebody said, this is something I didn't mention, even when somebody says, I make the pitch to them, I say, here's the mission, here's what I see your gifts are. And they say, I just can't do it. I really appreciate it. I can't do it. I say, great, that's fine. Here's where else I need you. And if at a minimum they can jump on my intercessory team, and I think every ministry needs an intercessory team, like how amazing would it be if your ministry is covered in prayer by 20 people? I'm like, look, at a minimum, I want you on my intercessory team. Can you do that? And if they say no to that, I'm like, what? Like, what are we working at here? Like, you can't pray, really? Like, my intercessory team literally are people that I email maybe once a week, once a month or something. I say, here's the prayer intentions for our ministry. I've got a young person dealing with this. I don't mention my name. We got a retreat coming up. Please cover us in prayer. We got, whatever the case may be. We got kids preparing for the first communion, cover them in prayer, whatever it is. Like, you should never take a no for an answer. When it comes to inviting a person into ministry. So I think that look, my ideal ministry is again, I do small group ministry. So I have small groups with young people that meet on Monday nights, on Tuesday mornings before school, on Sunday after mass, on Saturdays, etc. I think that I might be getting ahead of myself a little bit talking about what is possible for 10th, 11th, 12th grade ministry. To get the team that you need for EDGE, I'll let the EDGE expert kind of speak into that as well. But this is just in general, when we're recruiting volunteers for ministry, the more options you can give them to plug in, the more yeses you're going to get. We'll put it that way. So whether it's options in terms of flexibility of scheduling, or options in, I need people who can do this, I need people who can do this, I need people who can sweep floors, who can cook food, who can eat food, whatever it is, like, get them plugged in somewhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if they say no to the Tuesday night EDGE, I could say, hey, I need a third grade catechist on Sunday morning. I mean, there is that. I was just focusing on EDGE, which is the first step in the proposed rollout programs.
Yeah, and I don't want to stomp on the EDGE, because I know the EDGE people are speaking next week. I'm very familiar with EDGE. I could speak to, here's how I find people that are really good at middle school ministry, but I'd rather let the EDGE people speak to their unique program. In general, like, the more options you can give people, the better to use their giftedness in the mission of the church, the better.
Thanks, Everett. Thanks for the question, Daria. Go ahead, Jeannie. And then there's a question from Marianne in the chat. So we'll do Jeannie and then the chat question from Marianne.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so after reviewing some of the EDGE and recruitment, initially I had the idea, I have all this list of parents who I know, and I know their children. I'm thinking, okay, I'm reaching out to them. However, when I'm looking at recruitment, there's like this clause about actual students' parents being involved in ministry. Now, he said he was part of his son's ministry. How does that work? Is that, I don't know, I guess, like, pros and cons of that dynamic? Is that something we want to steer away from, or is it acceptable?
I think it depends on the parent and the young person. I'll say this: I almost never recommend a parent be the ministry formation leader for their own child. Almost never. there are times when the young person, I'll put it this way, with teenagers. So there are times when the reason why I mentioned my son, and I probably should have clarified this, I would have said, I never recommend it. And then my son came to me and said, hey, Dad, I want you to be my small group leader for youth ministry. And I said, okay, I'm going to break my own rule because I'm not going to say no to my son,
Right.
But which was a huge compliment on the case of, with
Right.
regards to my son. So will it work? I'll let you know in 6 years, like we'll see how it goes.
I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Please.
Email me in 6 years. I'll tell you if my son's still practicing his faith. But there's a reality that I think that there's an advantage. There's a lot of advantages to having parents minister to kids that are not their own, and kids. And like if a parent's going to come along, even if I have a parent coming along as a chaperone for like a retreat or something that we're doing, I give the young person veto power, and not with the parent in the room. I pull them aside and I'm like, hey, I just want to ask you if this is what you want, because your needs come first in this case. And if the parent seems like, yeah, no, absolutely. Or if I seldom have I actually had a kid say to me, no, I really don't want my parent coming along. Or I really don't want my parent as my teacher or something. Usually there's been an agreement on that ahead of time, I think, or conversation about that. But yeah, I think you're smart to have those antennas up. And I really think that's a case by case thing, but the best way to figure it out is to have conversations with the parents and the kids.
And figure that out. Okay, thanks.
Good question. Thanks, Jeannie. All right. So we also had a question in the chat from Marianne. Everett, when you indicated that in the 11 years you've been in your archdiocese, your offer to help and share your gifts had not been met with acceptance. Are you indicating that the priests don't take kindly to the changes that you advocate in youth ministry? How well are your ideas accepted in other parishes and dioceses?
Oh, that's a great question. How well are my ideas accepted? Generally very well. I mean, there's look, I'll tell you the truth. Like I've got groups that I've been working with that have, for example, I had a pilot that I worked with 4 years ago, because it takes a while to see what's the fruit of ministry. The Catholic high school implemented small group discipleship ministry. They actually hired a third-party firm to follow their young people through college and into adult life, and just surveying them, did what we did in ministry actually set them up for success. And so to be defined as an active Catholic, you have to be going to mass every Sunday as in college, you have to be involved in your campus ministry, and you have to have a daily prayer life. And a number of other things. 95% of them are still active Catholics that came out of the ministry that we built. Generally speaking, I would say that the things that I'm advocating for are, somebody actually wrote to me and said, hey, I read your book, The Art of Forming Young Disciples, which came out before the Synod on Young People. Then I read Christus Vivit, which was the document Pope Francis talked about talks about the results basically of the Synod and what his recommendations are. And he says, it looks like the Pope copied off of your book. Like it was just, the things that I'm saying national leaders in ministry have been saying for a long time. Is it well accepted in my archdiocese? Yeah, generally speaking. I think that the issue in the Archdiocese of Denver is that our ministry leaders do a terrible job following up with people. So there's I'm on board. Like I said, I just got invited to our diocesan synod meeting. I tend to be very involved and very vocal, but there are some issues in our own chancery and on the parish level with just like anything else. The ideas that are being advocated for in the Diocese of Erie, in the dioceses around the country, they're all coming from the same places. They're all coming from the same studies being done. It's all saying the same stuff. We're losing our young people. Here's what our young people are saying. Here's what we actually found to be effective. Getting it to actually trickle down to the people doing the ministry is the harder work that's being done in the church right now, and I hope to see results and success. But yeah, the ministry ideas and principles that I'm advocating for are not new.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, faith formation staff will linger for a little bit. Everett, can you linger with us for a couple minutes here? We'll see if anybody wants to stick around, but a couple of announcements for the good of the order. So next week we'll have folks with us from EDGE, and they did ask us to send your questions to them in advance so that even if you're not able to be here live, those questions will be answered and you can watch them in the recording. So you're welcome to send your questions to me. You're welcome, Teresa. You're welcome to send those to me by the end of the day on Friday so we can get those all to EDGE before the weekend. So we would welcome that from you all. And as always, if you want to discuss particulars for your parish, give us a call. We're happy to come meet with you, to take a phone call. Like we said, we'll have more information after tomorrow's meeting with the Western Vicariate. Friday, the building has off for the Holy Day. So we'll look forward to being in touch with you then. As always, we really want to walk with you. That's important to us. So thank you all so much.
Jesse, I'm going to quickly just I'll give you a quick, I think Katie Gray's the one who's hopping on with you next week. I'll give a quick endorsement for Katie. Katie's a friend and she is outstanding. So if and very lots of experience with middle school youth and I'll give a quick third-party endorsement of Katie Gray. I think your session next week will be fantastic.
Thanks, Everett. I did throw up a 1-question poll if anybody be willing to take that, just a quick temperature check from how this experience was for you today. We'll share that feedback with Everett as well. So once you take that poll, if you don't have any further questions, you're welcome to go. Thank you again for your grace today, for your attention. We're so glad to have you with us, and we look forward to journeying with you the next couple weeks. Take care, everybody.